All right.
First is meeting procedures.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of add to what Alex happened to say. First off, thank you for joining us. I'm going to basically ask people to be a bit patient. Maybe I should start off by saying if you're not talking right now, you might want to mute yourself. Anyway, keep in mind this is still new to us, and that we tend to have people to be part of the hearing as much as possible. We're going to ask that, like a regular meeting, that you speak only when recognized, and we encourage you to be in a well-lit room, use headphones if possible, and let your family know not to disturb you. Actually, thinking about this on this, you might want, the meeting is being taped by VCAM. And if you're just simply—
This meeting is being recorded.
Pardon?
Sorry, Mitch, that was me telling the computer to begin the recording.
Okay. And we just ask that you please identify yourself when you speak. Even if we've already gone through the introductions, this way here people will know who's actually speaking. It's also good for our minute taker. And unlike other Zoom meetings, people who are experienced with it, we have disabled chat and file sharing. And only the host will provide screen share. And the reason for this is to limit hacking possibilities and respect open meeting laws. So if you have any concerns and can't get on, you can email me, mcypes@hinesburg.org. I have that up there. And thank you all for your patience.
So at this point, I'm going to mute everyone, and then I'm going to unmute Mitch and Dennis. So for those of you that maybe just joined the call, Bev Knight is someone who I just admitted. Just know that everyone is going on mute, and you can unmute yourself. But the way, as Mitch said, the way to do that is to unmute and then say, "Excuse me, this is," and allow Dennis, the chair, to recognize you. All right, Dennis, it's all yours.
All right. Mitch, do we have any agenda changes?
No changes.
All right. If everybody can review the minutes of March 17th.
I didn't notice anything, Dennis.
I didn't have any changes.
John Lyman, I'm all set.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 This is Greg Waples voting aye.
All right.
Was that received?
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah, so Dennis, I think when it comes to voting time, it's going to be important, especially for folks who are dialing into the meeting and can't see what's happening, to do a roll call and just, walk through each board member and get their vote. I think
Okay.
it was unanimous on the minutes, so maybe that's easy.
All right. All right. Next is Michael Sirois and Debra Heintz and Kelly and Lorraine Donley. Subdivision revision to adjust a property line.
We may want to unmute.
Now, who is representing this application?
We have a few people. Let's see, Colin.
Yep.
And Michael. Let me unmute.
Take lead.
All right, we've got Michael who's unmute and Colin. Let's see. Colin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, do you want to just, I'm gonna put back on for screen share, the plot. Would you like to just give a short introduction to what's being proposed?
Sure. My name's Colin Johnson from Trudell Consulting Engineers. And I'm here on behalf of both the Donleys and Michael Sirois and Debra Heintz. And these two properties are located at 239 and 213 Apple Ridge Road. This was originally a part of an 8-lot subdivision back in 2002. And the purpose of this is a boundary line adjustment to take 5.31 acres from the Donley property and add it to Michael's property at 213 Apple Ridge Road. So that piece of property doesn't have any frontage. Right now it is a forested and a field, and it's undeveloped. And there's not going to be any changes to any buildings or any wastewater or water components, just the boundary line adjustment.
Okay. Do the board members have any questions?
Didn't, Dennis.
This looks like a pretty straightforward application to me.
Yeah. Me also. Is everybody else?
Yeah, John Lyman, yeah, it looks good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect any building envelopes, doesn't affect any setback issues. It's about as simple of an application as you can have.
And Mitch, I did see on your comments the note about the trail easement and the
Yes.
comment on that, which will be added. So
Right, it was a trail easement and one other particular note, which was from, okay.
and those will be added.
Okay. Is anybody here from the public that wants to speak? Mitch, you have the public unmuted?
Public, they can unmute if they want.
So I guess silence means nobody.
I would think so. Let me just check my email here just to make sure no one has emailed me, and let me have to send and receive just to make sure. And
But Dennis, I did unmute all participants. Some folks have chosen to remain muted.
Okay.
And yes, barring someone saying something or waving your hands, that always works if you're on video.
Okay.
Probably no comments on this one. It doesn't look
Yeah.
like anybody from the public is here for this application.
Okay.
right,
Just-
we
just
have
the applicant and the
an
engineer.
applicant and an applicant's engineer, so.
Well, I'll make
There
a
is a
motion.
draft approval.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and approve the draft as written.
This is Greg Waples. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I second that motion.
All right. Any more discussion? And when we vote, can you just speak your name when you vote? And all those in favor?
Greg Waples, aye.
Sarah Murphy, aye.
Dennis, aye.
Ted Bloomhart, aye.
John
George.
Lyman, aye.
Dick
John
Jordan.
says aye.
All right, I think that's unanimous.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, up next.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for that before I sign off.
All right.
Mike Sirois.
Welcome. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next is Gary Landrigan and G&J Properties LLC, conditional use review for the conversion of existing office space. Now, who will be speaking on behalf of this application?
My name's Gary Landrigan.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, thank you. So Mitchell, did you want me to explain this or?
Why don't you, yeah, I think that would be good. If you can start off and explain it. I'm just trying to think of what to actually put up for your application. I think what I'm going to start by sharing is just some of the pictures that happen to be, and I think you can see the building itself, which used to be a law office, and you basically want to take an apartment. There's a law office and apartment. You want to make it into 2 apartments. And I'm just going to show also, let's pull, and forgive me, this takes, I'm still to do this, and something has, yeah, there we go. And this is the interior, just so people can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, let's stop the share. And yeah, Gary, why don't you talk about it a little bit, and I can bring something back up if need be.
Sure. So this is a building somewhere between 26 and 2,800 square feet. That's on Route 116, 4 buildings down from Lampman's Grocery that I purchased with my wife at the end of January. It was so the building was constructed in 1850, and I believe was a single family unit for quite some time, and was purchased by Joe Fallon in 1983. And he had the front unit. Downstairs was a reception office, his office area, and upstairs he had a conference room. And the back part of the unit was used as a 3-bedroom apartment, which he's rented since that time. And so my proposal is to just capture one of the bedrooms from the back unit. And there's a door that goes from this 3rd bedroom into the hallway of the front office part of where Joe's office was. So my proposal was to block off the doorway that connects the back unit and capture that bedroom, which is about 12 by 13 dimensions. And there's a full bathroom that's attached to that and also has access to the hallway. So it'd be like a Jack and Jill bedroom. So capture that 1 bedroom, and so convert the front office into a 2-bedroom apartment, and that would leave a 2-bedroom apartment in the back. And so we put a full bath in the back unit to replace the bathroom that he would be losing with that bedroom. So I think that's it, Joe. There's some other intricacies about the well, which has been permitted. I think that's it.
Yeah, I'll just clarify that. Basically, the house itself was on town sewer and has its own well. And we've heard from Eric Bailey, the Director of Utilities, who basically said that switching from an office to the apartment would not require any additional allocation. And we have email on that. And there was just simply a question on the water. And we did get Jason Bernard's design opinion that this was fine, and they were working to get a water wastewater permit. And this morning they received a water wastewater permit. So as I sent to the board, I did send them an updated draft approval for this. And that's really all I have to say.
So Mitch, this is John Slayson for everyone. Just a question on the water for you, Gary. As I understand the permit, and maybe Mitch can confirm, but as I understand, it's subject to the chemical composition of the well to be verified. Is that right, Mitch, that this permit is subject to that clarification that the well comes back after all the testing?
I didn't catch that.
No, I didn't read that. I just got the permit this morning, but
If I'm reading the inspections 3.2, prior to the use of the potable water supply, the permittee shall test for said contaminants. Results of the water test shall be submitted prior to use.
Interesting. Jason, are you on? Can you unmute and talk about that?
You're muted there.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Jason Barnard. We actually, the well has been sampled. That was part of the original permit application. So those samples were collected. They did all pass. I'm not sure. I can go back to the state. It is fresh off the press. I didn't get a chance to review it today, but that was done as part of the original permit application. You're required to sample then. So I don't believe it would have to be resampled, but I can check.
Okay, I guess that's what my question was to, I was interpreting this also pretty quickly, and it was pretty clear that it said prior to use of the supply, you shall confirm. So I wanted to make sure that that gets captured in any condition that we authorize, that everything's approved.
Yep.
Hi, this is Dick Jordan. So I'm afraid I must be missing something. Isn't this building on town water and sewer?
No.
It's on town sewer. It's on its own well for water.
Yep.
Okay.
And this is Greg Waples interrupting. Does everybody hear me?
Yes. Yes, we hear you.
So do we not require applicants to actually connect to the town water system to the extent possible?
Director of Utilities, Eric Bailey, said that they didn't have to.
Any explanation why? I know they have a well there, and that may be a justification, but we're trying to maximize community use of the water supply and apportion costs appropriately. Does staff agree with that?
I defer to Eric Bailey, who is fine with it.
Okay, Eric Bailey's not our staff, though. Do we have staff comment on that?
Basically, this Eric works with the select board on these issues, and he could have, if he thought it was appropriate, require them to go on town water. He decided not to.
Okay, I get it. I just wanted to answer the question. No problem.
Good question.
Hi, Mitch. This is Phil Pouch. I'm on the select board, and I think we should look into this. And I'm not trying to prevent somebody from being on the well, but I think we really need to look at our zoning requirements around that. There may be something there that says that the well is, based grandfathered in. So that might be. So it's something I can certainly look into, but it would be good to, my understanding is everybody within the zone, any new buildings, any new things, they can't put in their own well. They have to use the water and sewer system.
Right.
But whether something can be grandfathered in like this, that would be fine if it can. I just don't know that as a fact.
Right, and I think that's maybe that didn't come across, that this was actually a well that has existed for a long time. And I think I think it was considered grandfathered. Jason, do you know how long this has been around?
The well, I believe, predates 1970 because it doesn't come up on the state database. And actually, if you go back through the lister's cards, technically, they had written down at one point 13 bedrooms in that building, so it's actually a decrease in flow. So you're not actually increasing the flows on the well that's there. You know, basically the well has the ability to serve. We've proved that it can produce the water quantity and quality to serve the project. I'm not sure if there's anywhere in the zoning that requires the hookup with a conversion, but essentially it's not a new construction in this case.
This is John Slayson again. So Jason, I guess when you look through the permit again, it's just confirming, even the very last paragraph just says that it's the potable water supply is approved pending the supply meets the standards. So, you know, verification of that sounds like it's pretty obvious, but the required isolation distances and the water quality standards. So I guess that's what I want to just see in our conditions, that we ensure that that's documented.
Agree.
Dennis, this is Alex Weinhagen speaking. I can alert you to the section of the zoning that does in fact require that wastewater disposal and water supplies are to be by connection to the town wastewater and water systems. It's in section 5.22.2 of the zoning. With that said, it's our practice in the past has always been, as Mitch said, to confer with the town's water and sewer department or utilities department and decide when there's an existing well situation, whether something needs to be connected or whether the existing well can simply continue. So at least in the time that I've been working for the town, the last 18 years or so, this idea of approving a project that involves use of an existing well within the water and sewer service area is not unusual. With that said, I respect Phil's feedback as a select board chair, and it seems to me that that is a larger issue that probably should be dealt with by the select board with regard to all users in the water and sewer service area, because this is not the only property that's served by its own private well within that area. So it might be something to work with the select board on, and the planning and zoning department would be happy to do that to sort of help facilitate bringing everyone into the water system rather than just those properties that happen to come before the development review board.
So Alex, this is Greg Waples cutting you off again. So what happens if suddenly the water supply from the well on this property in the town runs out and they don't have a water allocation from the town?
They would need to seek one, and
good. So what happens then? I mean, they don't have water. Their well is dry.
They would likely get an allocation from the select board at that point, and that would be the process. I mean, the other option is to force that to happen now, but this is an existing use. It's an existing historic structure. So it's not as if this is a new well being drilled. If it were me, Gary, I would be thinking about whether or not to connect to the town water system at some point, only because that well could be impacted by all of the dense uses around it. The Heart and Mead gas station is down the street. Lampman's has had some underground contamination issues from prior gas tanks underground. So there's certainly a positive to you as the landowner to looking into getting connected to town water.
Yeah.
My point was only that the zoning does have a section that says that it should be connected to the town system, but in practice for these sorts of existing wells, what Mitch is describing has been fairly common, that the director of water and wastewater sort of makes those calls and decides when a well can continue and when it should not.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I had considered that. I never moved forward to investigate it, but it was something that I thought about. And I probably should give it some further thought as well.
Yeah, and just simply.
Sounds wise.
I was going to say, just procedurally, this is what we've generally done in situations like this, has been go to the Director of Utilities and just ask the question and go by the guidance that he provides.
I have a comment. This is Ted. It would seem like there should be a, I guess, policy, not a each individual thing, getting each individual application, getting it kind of its very own ruling. But I'm also swayed by the fact that there's the outside of this building is not changing. There is no development, if you will. There's a change of use from an office to an apartment. That seems to me like the thing that keeps it out of the thou shalt hook up to the town water supply.
This is Greg Waples. I don't disagree with that. I was just raising them as issues, not only with this application, but others going forward.
All right, did the board members, any board members have any other questions?
No, so I guess though, do we amend the order? We have a draft approval.
We're not there yet.
Okay. I know public comment, but
no, go ahead.
well, I guess my comment was that I want to make sure that we do have a draft approval in front of us, but I think we need to amend it. Just to confirm that while we do have the wastewater water permit in place, I want to make sure that we have appropriate grounds to verify that the potable supply is in good standing.
You can add that, right, Mitch?
Well, don't we have to close the? Let's make sure we close the hearing, and then we can talk about this stuff.
So, sorry, this is Gary Landrigan. Is Jason still there?
I'm here. Yep.
Do we not get the test results back as the water was suitable?
It has been. The tests are back. They're suitable, and that's the basis where the permit was issued. So I'm not quite sure why it's in the permit again, but before they issue the permit, you have to demonstrate that the well meets the water quality outlined by the regs. So I'll just have to check with the state on that. But, to answer that question, it has been sampled. It does have appropriate water quality to serve the two apartments.
Thank you.
All right.
So I believe we can cover that with just a slight change to order number 1 that says and just add and all conditions thereof, which would cover it. But do your public hearing and your public and your the rest of the stuff first.
Okay. Is anybody here from the public for this application?
Dennis, this is Greg Waples. I hear a deafening no, so I think we can move forward.
Okay. Mitch, did you?
All right, I'm looking at here, I'm looking at the order. The project shall be completed, operated, and maintained as set forward in the plans and exhibits. And what was the thing you wanted to add, Ted? I was thinking of putting it right there.
Well, order number 1, where it says the applicant shall obtain a state wastewater system report. We can, even though we have it in hand, you can leave that as an order.
Actually, I updated the decision this morning. Are you looking at the one that was there before?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me call that one back up. And just bear with us for one moment, please, everyone.
Yeah, I think Mitch, probably the old one is better in this case. Because we do have the permit, but yet the permit is odd, as Jason's saying, how it says these things need to be confirmed. So.
And yet it was already confirmed in that way. Let me see if
But
this.
yeah, because the permit has done that to us, I think we have to give it its due diligence.
So we should stay with the old draft then and just add some to it. Add what Ted wanted to add to it.
Right.
Yeah, the old one says you shall obtain a wastewater system. You can leave it like that, even though we have one in hand, and
Right.
just say and comply with all conditions thereof, and that kind of covers it.
All right, because what's kind of odd about this particular one is that they've already received the permit, but we could actually keep, well, let me ask this. Do you think that, it almost sounds like we're trying to merge these two different drafts, because you don't need to get the permit, and I don't think you actually need, you're looking for the zoning administrator to issue a zoning permit based on them getting a wastewater permit. What you're really looking for is a comment from the prior draft with the language of the wastewater permit being part of the condition of the order on the new permit, on the new draft.
The potable water supply. So not the wastewater, but
Yes.
yeah, the what's in the permit, we can be explicit here. The potable water supply 6.1, I think we want to have evidence that these conditions have been met.
Dennis, this is Alex Weinhagen. Can I jump in briefly?
Sure.
So, Jonathan, I think that the condition that you're seeing in the water wastewater permit is a boilerplate condition that is in all water wastewater permits.
Okay.
You're looking at conditions.
Inspections.
Yeah, what's the number of the condition?
Well, it's at the page 2 of 3 under 6.1.
So it's 6.1, right?
That's the potable water supply.
Yeah, let me see if I can share it on screen here. Just a moment.
I mean, that's what I wanted to ask, that clarification question. And I guess if Jason, I don't know, do you have enough time to read this quickly and make sure that?
Well, can everyone see the screen share that I'm providing now?
Yes.
So this is the permit, and this is the potable water supply section, and the condition 6.1 reads that this project is approved with an existing on-site drilled well water supply system, provided the water supply meets or exceeds the required isolation distances, construction standards, and water quality standards. The landowner shall operate the potable water supply in a manner that keeps the supply free from contamination. My sense is that this is probably just boilerplate that they put on all water supply permits. Jason, can you confirm?
That's standard language that they put on all their potable water supply and wastewater permits. So the isolation distances are met, the construction standards and the water quality standards, those have all been met when we applied for the permit, when we submitted the application.
So, that's great. I guess it's maybe just a comment for you, Jason, or for others to take forward to the state. Like, why does it say provided that these things meet this? Why doesn't it say this is approved given that this system meets these standards?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to talk to them and see if I can get them to revise their language. It's basically food for thought and getting through with them.
All right. So you, as the engineer, if you're vouching that these standards have been met, then I'm comfortable in proceeding with our conditions. But
yeah, the permit wouldn't have been issued otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a requirement to do the sampling and prove that it does meet all those standards.
Okay.
How about if we just add an order 2 that says the applicant shall comply, or the landowner shall comply with all standards of permit WW-4-5358. Does that cover it?
So Mitch, this is Alex. The only problem with that is that may put our zoning administrator in the position of enforcing a state permit, which is a no-no. The state enforces their own permits.
True.
Fine to reference the state permit in our local level permit, but I don't think we want our zoning administrator to have to deal with that.
Well, the only thing is that since this is a use, it wouldn't have, and since they're not waiting on something, it wouldn't require a local permit.
Well, the permit will be this permit from the DRB, which if it has a condition in it that needs to be enforced, then the zoning administrator would be that person, whether that's 6 months from now or 2 years from now. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
I like as the planning and zoning director, I like to have our enforcement officers responsible for separate things, state versus local.
All right, well, then it comes to then the edited one that was provided this morning. I'd like to ask the board what they think of that particular draft decision.
I'm fine with it. Are the other board members fine with it?
Me also.
This is Greg Waples. I'm okay.
John Lyman.
I do have a couple of other minor issues, but not on the substantive issue.
This is Dick Jordan. I'm gonna have to say I'm going to need to abstain on the vote anyway, because I apparently did not get copies of any of these draft decisions. And I'm afraid to try to go get them now and lose the connection.
Right. The challenge of trying to connect through your iPad and also look at documents on the same device.
I don't know. This is kind of a weird situation. Can we bring Brian or Brandon in on this?
Well, so just this is Slayson, and I am fine with that. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be more than enough positives, I think, or pro votes. So I don't think we need to bring somebody in.
That's true.
Unless they've been very much listening to it and have been on board since the beginning.
Well, this is the beginning, pretty much.
Yeah.
Greg, what issues did you have, Greg?
Finding number one talks about a public meeting, and we didn't have a public meeting. I don't know if that's been revised since.
I just said the applicant, well, let's see, did I say it here?
The previous application talked about a remote meeting, and this language was different, and we should use the same language from the Sirois application for this.
All right.
That makes sense.
I could add that.
We didn't have a public meeting.
This doesn't count as a public meeting?
Well, I don't know, but we in the first application we explicitly stated it was done remotely, and we should do that again now.
All right.
For clarity, this is Alex. This is a public meeting, but Greg's point is well taken. You might as well use the same language to recognize that it was a special public meeting.
Yeah.
I'm going to
the second question I had about this application was, we don't talk about lighting at all, and I think we should. It's probably compliant. Almost all our applications for either commercial or even non-compliant structures have lighting restrictions, and this one surprisingly did not have anything about that, and it's in the middle of town. So,
well, I think
just a regular downcast.
Go ahead. All right, I think the thought there was that there wasn't any exterior changes to this.
Well, then we should recognize that, but why don't we still condition it? I mean, if this goes back decades, I'm not sure what the lighting conditions in any previous applications were, but we should make them compliant with the existing regulations.
So this is Alex Weinhagen again. Dennis, if you'll indulge me, I'd love to share a section from our regulations that addresses this question, because it's a really good question, and our lighting regulations were revised just a couple of years ago. Is it all right if I share a section from the zoning?
Sure.
Of course, now I have to find it.
It's
Here we go.
529.
Yep, I've got it. So it should be on your screens now. As Mitch said, this is section 5.29 of the zoning, which is our outdoor lighting section. And this section that's highlighted talks about, sorry, Greg, that you can't see this, but if you're looking at section 5.29.1, it's the end of that section. It talks about lighting installed prior to the enactment of this section may continue to be used even if non-conforming. However, projects subject to DRB review shall remove and replace non-conforming lights if the project includes new or revised site lighting, or if the board otherwise determines that it's necessary due to particularly egregious existing lighting. So the board does have the power to compel existing lighting to be retrofitted if it feels like there's an issue. In this project, I don't know that Mitch, I'm certainly not aware of what the existing outdoor lighting is on this building. I don't know that you are either, Mitch, right?
We haven't heard any type of concerns about this particular building regarding lighting.
This is John Lyman. Could you simply state that if there ever is an issue, it would have to come back in front of the board to get resolved?
I think it might be
Greg
easiest.
Waples saying that's kind of vague for lighting. I think we ought to just require them to comply with the existing standards, and they probably do. But if they don't, I mean, one of these entrances is close to 116, and we should be concerned about what's emanating from any light fixture there.
So one option would be to include a condition that says that the project needs to comply with section 5.29 on outdoor lighting, and that specifically when lighting fixtures are replaced, that they're replaced with fixtures that conform. Another would, which I think is what Greg is recommending, is to simply require that any existing lighting that is non-conforming be replaced so as to be conforming.
That seems like a legitimate thing from my point of view. I mean, they're here before the board. There's times we use these opportunities to clean things up.
Does the applicant comment?
Gary?
This is John Lyman again. I mean, we just said the water was pre-existing. And so the lighting is pre-existing. So you got to be careful of when do you say you have to upgrade or not upgrade.
This is Jonathan Slayson, though. That lighting is a adverse impact on someone else other than water is on the residence itself. So I think that's where, Greg, I think Alex articulated it well, and I'm in support of trying to adhere to the latest standards.
So
Do we have a comment from the applicant?
Well, this is Gary Landrigan.
Okay.
There's one light on the entrance, the front door entrance, as far as lights in proximity to the sidewalk and Route 116. And there's also one light on the back porch for the back unit's entrance.
So complying shouldn't be an issue.
I don't see that it should be an issue at all.
Okay.
Yeah, and Gary, just to give you some comfort, if you need it, the outdoor lighting section 5.29 was written to exempt a certain number of lights for residential uses, as long as those lights are below a certain lumen or brightness value.
Yeah.
And I believe the regulations say you're granted 4 lights per dwelling unit. You're well below that.
I read that, and I was actually quite comfortable.
Yeah, so the only thing
I'm quite comfortable or well within the standards.
The only thing you would want to verify would be the brightness of those 2 lights that are there. But otherwise, I bet Greg's right. You're probably compliant, and a condition like this is just something that we can hold your feet to the fire in the future.
Sure.
You put on a big spotlight someday.
Yeah, yeah.
So how about just simply making order number 2, lighting shall comply to section 5.29 of the HCR? Something as simple as that.
That's fine. I mean, that would,
Works for me.
That works for me.
All right, so I've made 2 changes to the new draft. I put in for finding of fact number 1, I've pretty much copied the sentence that was in the Donley Sirois draft. And I've added an order number 2, lighting shall comply to section 5.29 of the HCR as the second order. Oh, and actually in the part that says order, it says condition, I've got to make that plural, conditions.
Greg Waples, I can live with that.
Do the board members have any other questions before I open it up to the public?
Comply with.
We should have done it. It's kind of backwards, unfortunately.
Anybody here from the public for this application? All right, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and approve the draft as amended.
Greg Waples seconding.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
John
Greg Waples,
Lyman,
aye.
aye. Oops.
Aye. Ted's aye.
Dennis, aye.
John Slayson, aye.
Dick Jordan, I did take the risk and download it during while the discussion was going on.
Glad you're still with us, Dick.
Sarah Murphy, aye.
All right, thank you.
great. This is Gary Lanning. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, up next is a Russell Family Trust sketch plan review for a 3-lot subdivision at New South Farm.
Would you mind pulling up the sketch plan, Mitch?
Am I back to being able to share here?
It's handy staying on for 2 meetings.
I think Alex is muted.
Okay.
But you are co-host, so you can still share.
All right, is it up there?
It is.
Nope. That's the first one.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I grabbed the wrong one. Try this again. How's that?
Perfect. A little, I can see it, run you through it pretty quickly. This is Jason Barnard, representing the Russell Family Trust. I want to just talk about quickly, this was originally part of the South Farm subdivision that was done, I believe in 2005, 2004 timeframe. The project as proposed is a subdivision of lot 9, was an existing lot or the remaining lands of that previous subdivision that was done. We are proposing to create 2 additional parcels, one 0.5 acres in size and one 0.57 acres in size, so just a little over half an acre. The remaining parcel would then be adjusted to by a boundary line adjustment or dissolving of a boundary line to the north. And the remaining lands would be included with the rest of the Russell Family Trust. The site, the two new parcels would be accessed by an existing right-of-way that was originally put in with the original subdivision for this purpose of 2 additional parcels being created. That would be off of South Farm Road. It would then wrap back around to the west, northwest, where that would access both properties. As proposed right now, we would serve the 2 structures by municipal water and sewer. There was some talk early on of potentially drilling wells. I have discussed that with the Russell family, but obviously we've had numerous discussions about that already tonight in the previous hearing. So sounds like that wouldn't be an option, maybe to drill wells, although the 5 homes before this, they drilled wells, and I believe that may have been a time when there wasn't as allocation. I'm not quite certain. After the subdivision is complete, there would be a remaining 14.3 acres left that would be obviously boundary line adjusted, or the boundary would be dissolved between the 2 Russell Family Trust properties. That would continue to be used for agriculture. It does have trail easements. The purpose was try to cluster these houses a little bit, or cluster them to the west of the property over towards the more village center and leave the bulk of the property open. Believe it sort of conforms with what is already done and was part of that original subdivision. We've reviewed the deeds, reviewed all the covenants. This seemed to be what was set up and coming down the line here at some point. So the easements were in place, the right-of-way was in place, and basically just the Russell family wants to utilize those 2 existing parcels and then have the balance of the land continue to be used as agriculture.
Now, Jason, the wells that were drilled for the other houses, do they have heat pumps in those wells, or?
I'm not certain on that, Dennis.
Okay.
I can find out.
Some of them have heat pumps, but not every house has heat pumps. I think 4 out of 6.
4 out of 6.
I think those homes, this is Phil, sorry. I think those homes are outside of the village district, so for water. So
Okay.
I'm not sure that, I mean, I think a well could be an option. It doesn't matter, but it could be an option.
Okay. Well, that was just one of the items that we've sort of been discussing with the Russell family. The cost of going underneath the road, getting water up on the hill versus drilling the well. So that's something we're still in the process of exploring.
You'd want to check because it may be out of the zone. You may not be able to hook to city water. And I don't know that for a fact, but it's something to check into.
Yeah. That was the plan.
This is Ted. Where is the boundary line? Where's the district boundary line?
I'm not quite certain. I don't know if we have it on our map.
Do you know, Mitch?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking it up right now.
So this is Alex. I can clarify. The 2 lots that are proposed are in the water and sewer service area. So they are and should be connected to the town water and sewer system. The rest of the property also is, but as Jason mentioned, there was dispensation granted when the original subdivision was approved to not have a water connection and to have individual wells. But in this proposal, the applicant's proposing to connect these 2 new lots, and that's consistent with the zoning regs and the water and sewer ordinances.
Yeah,
So why?
it is part of it. The one thing I'm just wondering about if at the time, whether there was sufficient water pressure to get water up into that particular area. And that might have been also a reason where they may have gone with wells. But Jason, if you want to comment on that.
Well, we're certainly going to look at water pressure before we get anything up on the hill. And if you had to, you can always do it with a booster pump right in the basement of the house if need be. But that's certain. Before we do the actual design, we'll want to know what a static pressure is down there at the water main, so we make sure we can provide adequate pressure to those houses.
Yeah, and this is Alex again. Sorry to butt in. I'll try not to going forward. But Mitch, remember Eric Bailey was asked that question and answered that there is no issue with water pressure, and so that's not an issue in Eric's mind. Lastly, I'll just clarify that while this is in the water and sewer service area for the town, it is not in the village zoning district, and it is not in the village growth area set of zoning districts. This property is in the rural residential 1 zoning district, and the rest of the neighborhood is also in the rural residential 1 zoning district. So it's right next to our village growth area, but it's technically not in it. It's on the outskirts.
Right, but it is in the water and sewer district. Lot 7 and 8 on this property is in the residential 2 zoning district, where the rest of what was the then 2006 subdivision, the other 7 lots are in the rural residential 1.
Can you speak to the driveway access, Jason?
Sure.
This is
I certainly can. I don't know if there's a way to zoom in, Mitch. Right about halfway up the road. There you go. Perfect. So as shown on our drawing, basically what we did is we took the original survey plat that was filed and recorded from the original subdivision. That is a right-of-way that was on the survey plat. We went up, just set some GPS control and sort of spun this thing on grid. That is the access right now across the Vermont Building and Resources. That is where the right-of-way is shown. It would be a little nicer if it came in on a little bit better of an angle than a straight 90. It actually, if we could turn it down the hill a little bit, but that's something we just have to look at when we start looking at driveway grades and sort of getting access to those other 2 parcels.
So this is Dick Jordan. I guess one thing that struck me when I was looking at the placement of the lots and the resource map, in particular the slopes, it seems like lot 10, which I think is the right one as we're looking at it. In particular, that seems to be sitting predominantly on like 10 to 15 and 15 to 25% slopes. I know those resource maps are a little sketchy, but the contours we're seeing here, I believe, are 5-foot contours. It just seems like a very steep lot, especially where the building envelope's getting placed. And it seems like in other cases, other applications, we've kind of pushed people to stay off of slopes like that.
Well, we can certainly, with that and obviously the overlays with the slope district, we can obviously look at and give you some slope calculations in those areas with regards to what the actual slope is and confirm those with some survey ground shots as well. But a lot of those, especially with and lot 11, I believe we're under that 15%, and I know right where the house is, I believe we're still less than that 20. It is a steeper area. It's not, I don't believe that we exceed any of the 20% slopes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the lot closer to 116 seemed better as far as slopes were concerned, but the second lot to the right, I guess, seemed like it was right in places where we've been telling other people and I don't see a solution, because that whole lot seems to be on fairly steep slopes. So I'm just wondering, is this one of our showstoppers that as far as the rest of the board's concerned? Because I just thought we were, of late especially, more critical of building on steep slopes. And I thought we considered 15 to 20% steep.
Well, there's two different categories. We have steep slopes that are over 25%, which we absolutely tell people not. And we also have slopes between 15 and 25%. These moderate slopes, which in the regulations, you can do like a small impact to. Question is this more than a small impact?
And we'll have to, and obviously we want to go through and look at where those slopes are and what the percentage is.
Okay. So is this something that we would continue the meeting and you come back to us, or you're looking for a decision and then we handle this at a later stage?
I'd want to come back to you and just see how much and what percentage of those building envelopes are actually in areas that exceed that 15%.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't believe that we're over 20% in those building areas, but again, if I start throwing on CAD here, I'm going to crash and lose the meeting. So I can't really do the measurements right now. I don't dare to. So it's something that we certainly want to look at.
This is Greg Waples. Am I still unmuted?
Yes.
We hear you.
Okay. I think probably Ted and I walked this property 15 years ago when the original subdivision occurred. I have some recollection of this property. It seemed like it was a junkyard, and there were kind of really steep slopes going down to 116. But I think it might behoove us to do a site visit, especially for those who haven't been on the board or haven't visited the property. And I'd like to go back and look at this because I think Dick's question is sensible. But my vague recollection of the property is that we were anticipating development on those lots, and we thought it was appropriate. So maybe we ought to take a quick look. It wouldn't take long. It's a pretty small parcel here.
Yeah. And can I just say something? So the original with the decision and what was issued before is that's where the remaining parcel was to be developed, was that westerly corner. So that was designated to be left over as a buildable area. That was one of the only buildable areas, that and on the far east side of the property. Unless something was not issued right in the past decision, that's why we went with that area.
So I understand that, but we do change things over time, right? So that may have been acceptable or whatever at the time it was initially put together, but we're looking at it with new regs. As far as I know, I mean, I don't know that we're automatically bound by whatever the original agreement was or application approval was.
Okay.
So anyhow, I would be in favor of a site visit.
Sure. It was actually on the plat, the Mylar, and it was in the decision. That's where that came from with that area.
Hey, this is Brandon Martin, and forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I just had a thought. Jason, would it be possible, assuming that the contours we're looking at are LiDAR and they can be created or be turned into a surface?
Yep, those are LiDAR.
Sorry?
Those are LiDAR contours.
Yep. Could you guys create a surface out of that and turn on contour banding? I think it might just help the board to be able to visually see the overlay of the slopes. Yep. Especially how they compare to the slopes on the existing parcels.
Sure.
And actually, Jason, kind of adding to that, being that these are LiDAR, is it possible that the actual slopes are shallower than than what's actually shown on the LiDAR, which is very much an approximation.
It's possible, but when it's with our experience with the LiDAR, it's generally pretty darn close, especially when it's an open field like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
This is Ted. It appears to me, just looking at the contours where the existing houses are, that it's not a whole lot different. But it would be good to have visuals, and I'm sure people who haven't been out there, it'd be good for them to be out there to see the site.
sure.
The rest of the board members, would they like to do a site visit?
Greg Waples, I would, even though I haven't been there in a long time, but I've seen it before, but I would like to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that relates also to the connectivity issue, because there was a question about whether there was access down to 116, and I think it was going to go through lots 10 and 11, and it would have been like walking down the Washington Monument or something. Very steep there. So I think it would be helpful to have a site visit.
And I'm not sure access to 116 directly from those parcels. There's a trail easement that runs along the westerly side of lot 11. I believe, and that was part of the previous decision, and that's in the Mylar as well.
Well, where there would be access, if any, from to 116 was an open question 15 years ago, and to my mind, it wasn't through the tip of the bottom of lot 10 or 11.
Actually, comment on that. It looks like as well, this easement that is shown was part of that 2006 decision. And just simply the idea of trying to create an access onto 116 through lot 11, it would be a very, very steep access and probably wouldn't fit the, was it B71 requirements.
So maybe this is Jonathan, just a general question, maybe then for Jason to walk us through. Has there been any conversation about tie-in to the proposed sidewalk on the southerly side of 116? And, or has there been any conversation about either a sidewalk along 116 to Buck Hill, where there might be more of a formal intersection? Walk us through if there's been any conversation about connectivity to the village.
There hasn't been any discussion with regards to sidewalk at this point. I'm not sure if there was anything in the previous decision with regards to access. I'd have to look at that further. The westerly side of lot 11 is a trail easement.
Yeah, to go up into the trails.
To go back up into the forest. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's my interest in the site walk as well, is just trying to be practical, realize that there's a node of activity here. There will be the sidewalk on the other side of 116. We're on a state highway, acknowledging that crosswalks are not easy to design or get approved. But I think we want to maintain a safe and walkable environment here. And even though it's kind of outside our village district, I consider this kind of being that southern tier. So that's an interest of mine to hear and brainstorm with the applicant about.
John Lyman, I guess I would agree a good visual will probably be appropriate.
Now, Jason, is that something you could stake out?
Yep.
Like driveway and where the
We
building
certainly can.
are?
Yep, we'll give you we'll give the major turns in the shared driveway, the split in the driveway. We can put stakes in for the building envelope.
Okay.
And at that point in time, we can also, like I said, we'll create a tin with the LiDAR surface, and then we can look at the slopes for that area. I'm just sitting here looking at where some of the other houses were. It's comparable to what is sort of there already. We'll just have to do the calculations and look at what those slopes are.
And maybe look at somehow of a sidewalk, or how you're going to connect to the sidewalk across the road, or
Prior to the site visit?
or I would just be thinking about it.
Yep.
Yeah, Jason, this is Greg Waples. I don't think you need to think about it necessarily or demonstrate anything before our next meeting, because I know the topography at the bottom of lot 11 is impossible. And I think we thought about connectivity 15 years ago, and just think going forward with what's going to be or is in place now.
Okay.
This is Jonathan again. Is it worth covering the wind turbine comment in our staff notes?
Sure.
I don't have any concern, frankly, but it's something in there that I guess we should try to discuss.
Jason, is there a wind turbine there? Maps I've seen and photos.
There's an
and
easement. There's an easement.
But is there actually a turbine there?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
Well, Greg Waples, can we not be coy about this? Is there thought to put a turbine there? And if so, what's the proposal? Or if not, then extinguish it?
That was actually an easement, Greg. That was in the previous plat that was recorded in 2006. The easements and everything that are shown, that was in the original survey Mylar and part of the original subdivision.
Okay, would you be willing to extinguish that to extinguish neighbors' concerns about turbine issues?
I would certainly talk with the Russell Family Trust.
Well, that might be the easiest way to deal with this. So looking forward, maybe that's something to think about.
Yes.
This may be also kind of an interesting legal issue, because the power to extinguish that particular easement may actually lie in the homeowner association, lots 1 through 6. Since they are the owners of that particular easement.
I find it hard to believe that the homeowners would have the right to erect a wind turbine that the town didn't want. So,
right.
I think the town could extinguish that within the rights of any covenant or deed. The deed would simply give them the right to do it, but superior landowners could say, we're not going to do it, and extinguish that right. So I don't think that's probably going to be a problem. Not to be triple redundant, but.
Well, we look forward to the applicant addressing it.
Their creative thinking on that. Doesn't sound like anybody wants it there.
Highly unlikely.
Although I could understand why it was actually placed there, since the applicant was basically trying to create an existing condition, and being that that's on maps, then it should be there. The only thing I would just say is the way it looks, it almost looked like that there was an existing wind turbine there, but it's just the easement that's actually there.
Yep. Well, with the survey plat, we're required to show it. If it's an easement of record, we're required to show it.
Yep.
And I know they've done a lot of work on solar there, so they've done their fair share of promoting energy efficiency.
Yes. I believe Phil has his hand up.
Right, but I think, does Dennis want to bring this to the public at this time?
Are the board members all set with their questions for?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Just state your name, please.
Sure, it's Phil Pouch, and I'm part of South Farm. And I'll address a few things, but I don't pretend to speak for the South Farm Association. You know, we've had some discussions about this, but I think I'll share my thoughts on the project, and I'll certainly let them weigh in. Again, we haven't, you know, gotten together and discussed this thoroughly, other than just some passing thoughts on the project. So again, I'm speaking just for myself. Number one, I'm totally okay with this. This has been part of this sub-development since we bought the property, so I'm totally fine with it. I think, you know, I would like to be involved in at least the driveway layout, because it does go in front of my house, and the property, that lot section is designated as a farming or agricultural piece for our property owners. So I've gone ahead and planted things there, including a bunch of blueberries and stuff, which may be right on the corner of where the right of way is. So I'd like to have some input, and obviously you want to locate that driveway to be as safe as possible and dealing with the slopes. But I'd like to have some discussions about the final location of that in that 50-foot right of way to minimize the impacts there. I think the association would want to have some discussions of where it connects to our existing access way for South Farm. And I would agree with the applicant that that sharper than 90 degree, 120 degree angle to get in there would be quite difficult. There's a hill going up. So I think that perhaps the location of that could be improved for better access for the users of it. And then as far as the turbine goes, with my background, I wouldn't want anybody to say we couldn't put a turbine there. But at the same time, I doubt there'll ever be a turbine there, because it's not a very windy site, and all the permitting, and with our existing governor, there probably would never be a turbine there. South Farm was built with each home maximizing solar energy, and the goals of those homes were to be as close to net zero, if not net zero. So therefore, you've got geothermal heating systems, you've got heat pumps, you've got a lot of solar, and I would encourage the other two lots to be just as aggressive in that way. So whether they use solar on the roof, you'd want them orientated so that that they can do that. Because I think 10 years ago, South Farm was well known for being net zero neighborhood. I think every other member of South Farm is proud of that environmental achievement. So I would hope that these additional lots would try to maximize that, and whether it's geothermal, heat pumps, and solar would be highly encouraged. So those are my comments anyways. Again, I don't speak for the South Farm Association, but I think they may have some of those same thoughts. Thanks.
Anybody else? we have anybody else from the public? All right, well, I think,
No, excuse me. This is David Pasicow,
okay,
a resident of the South Farm Association. So it's just agreeing with Phil's comments of what's going on there. We're supportive of what's being built up there. And just our, speaking for myself, but also as, neighborhood walk as we social distance and talk to each other. Just concerns that we hope that as this goes forward, that the applicant will talk to the association regarding how that roadway or access road is built and who will be responsible for maintaining it and how they will interact with the association. That's just a concern because that's, when you look at the length of that driveway, it equals the existing driveway that's in our neighborhood already. So there is going to be some maintenance costs there in the future. So we just want to make sure they reach out to the association and we can have conversation about that. And that's my comments for tonight. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
So this is Dick Jordan, and I'll go out on a limb that my assumption would be that whatever agreement for the driveway would be, those two lots would be responsible for the piece that they alone use, and that I would assume that they would somehow be incorporated into your road association, assuming you have one, for the shorter piece of your driveway that they share. But I would not expect the rest of the people on South Farm Road to be at all responsible for the piece that goes to those two houses. I don't know if Jason has any comments there.
I think you summed it up, Dick. That's what would happen. They would have responsibility or a certain percentage down from where they intersect the road. Obviously, the right of way is not something that we propose. That was already there. That is off the original survey plat. I'm not sure why they entered the road at that particular angle. We would like to and have looked at some of the grading and making that turning radius to get into that driveway. If at all possible, we would like to alter that right of way location. Not sure if that's going to be possible, but that is one of the things we looked at in going forward. That would be incorporated in the design, and actually looking at what Phil had said. If there's a way to sort of shift things around now and make it work for everybody, that certainly, I believe the Russell family would be all for that.
Does anybody else?
Just quick, Waples, I'm hearing we. Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis. We may not have heard from all the public.
I think that was everybody.
Dennis, I think Phil has his hand up. If you see him on the video monitor, it's hard to see everyone at the same time, but.
Just one more comment, sorry. Thanks, David Pascal. I did want to also note that we do have an access way, a walkway that's part of there's an easement there for a walkway that comes and sort of parallels that proposed shared drive in a way. So again, when we look at the final layout of that, we would want to either not impact the walkway, which is used by not only our neighborhood, but people from coming down Buck Hill cut through and use that. So we've seen, particularly nowadays, we see a lot of people using it, and it's a nice walkway, and it gives, it prevents you from having to walk down 116 from Buck Hill, which is a little cliff there, and it's quite steep. So we'd want to, certainly want to keep that for that walkability and connectivity. So when the final driveway is laid out, not only am I concerned about the plantings and minimizing the impact there if that's possible, but also taking a look at how that walkway, and it's a gravel walkway, how that gets impacted, and having to adjust that if necessary to make sure that proposed shared drive is safe and well laid out for good access to the homeowners, and at the same time still allow the walkway and not impede on that.
This is Greg Waples interrupting. Just say I think that underscores why we should have a site visit that not only comprehends these two little lots, but the relatively small subdivision to see how it's an integrated whole.
And just, we do have a strong association. We regularly have minutes and follow all the rules. And as far as the road goes, it's very active. We have money put aside. So when additional homeowners would join that association, we have to have some discussions on whether some additional funds would need to equal what's in there. And as far as the roadway goes, it's not a percentage based on how far up the road you are. It's an equal share across the board. That's how our association is today, which works out very well. And it's okay with me since I'm the first one now.
Just for clarification, is that walkway, is that within the 50-foot right of way, or does that have its own easement? Because the plat that we referenced and we put on here, that's actually the one that's recorded. There's not, certainly, I don't believe there's a separate easement for that walkway, and I just want to confirm.
I think there is. I've seen it on some drawings that I have. So I believe that is laid out somewhere. It's not on your drawing. It looks like it would be just to the, I guess, south of the driveway.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure that it's impacted, but where you enter from the South Farm Road, if you moved it down farther than what I think might be a better entrance, you may be getting close to it. So
Okay.
I think really looking at the site would be the best thing. You can see the walkway easement, and they are on some drawings, I know that. And then really just walking it and seeing, the best
Sure.
location for that shared drive.
I'm just curious because this is the actual recorded Mylar that was part of that subdivision. So it doesn't show up on this one that we have, unfortunately. That we went back a couple of times because there was so many iterations of this map. We made sure we got the right recorded Mylar, and that's the one that's right out of the town. So all the easements that are shown were part of that original decision.
All right, so Mitch, when can we have a site visit?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we are under an interesting order that kind of limits us physically getting together.
So next year?
If I may, if it's staked out well enough and with Google Maps, I think individually we could go out and take a look at it and discuss it again. I think we need to be cognizant of the times we're in, getting into.
Well, maybe we might have to split it up into 2 visits.
I think that's all. I think these are all possibilities. I'm not sure if everybody's work situation, in a sense of would they need a weekend or even just some odd day during the week if you happen to be working from home.
So can I just, so we'd have to get approval to actually stake it out. I mean, I'm not sure if it's considered essential work at this point in time. Some of the work that we're doing is, some of the survey work we've actually had to put on hold until after this has been lifted. So I just want to make sure I'm not sending my survey crew out in a situation that they're I want them to be comfortable with, and I want to make sure that I'm following the letter of the law in terms of what work we can do.
I think there may be some guidance from Vermont municipality and municipality, the website.
Yeah, I've read through the guidance with the surveying in urban areas it's kind of a gray area. If we're up surveying 100 acres on Campbell's Hump and it's a one-man crew, we're certainly okay. I just want to check on that to verify, because we have put all our urban surveys, Burlington, Williston, Essex, on hold until after the stay-home order has been lifted.
This is Alex Weinhagen again. If I could chime in, our town administrator, Renee Marshall, has been really good about encouraging all of us to get some perspective on what's most important right now. And she's provided our department guidance from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, as well as the State Agency of Commerce and Community Development, which outlines which businesses and functions are covered by the governor's stay-at-home order and which are not. Nothing we're talking about tonight, as I understand it, is exempted from that order. So we, in my mind, we should not be holding a group site visit until that order is lifted, and we should not expect Jason's team to be out there doing work on that site until that order is lifted.
So how should we move forward?
Well, my recommendation would be, continue it out to a meeting, to a date certain, one of your future meetings. And then if you need to continue it again, because we're still in a stay-at-home, stay-safe order, you can do that. I would defer to Mitch on when.
We could continue this to the next meeting, and just simply where we literally just open it up, and if it ends up being a situation where we can't really make a decision as to when, we can then just continue to the next meeting until we actually have an idea of it.
When's the next meeting, Mitch?
The next meeting would be April 21st.
Well, you might as well go into May, because
Well, then the next one after that is May 5th.
The governor is going to extend his quarantine order, so I would suggest we
go into
talk
May.
about this next in May. It's sometime in May. We'll have a better idea then.
All right, so we've got May 5th, we've got May 19th.
I was going to say mid-May at the earliest, or I was even going to say mid-June.
I think that's optimistic, but May 19th probably sounds sensible to start.
Does that
And
work
we
for
can always
everybody?
continue it again.
Absolutely. I just don't want to have a bunch of meetings every 2 weeks and have people show up just to have it continued. So we might as well push it out.
We do have things scheduled at least for the next, well, at least the next meeting and most likely the next two. So, we
So
can,
it sounds like the consensus was the May 19th meeting to schedule a site visit ahead of that meeting, say at 6 o'clock.
no, actually what I think was being suggested at this point was to continue this meeting to May 19th and then have a meeting to decide when a site visit would take place.
Well, I think we could always decide in light of the governor's recommendations when we might be able to do a site visit. So we can always do that, I think, by kind of a quorum online, can't we?
Well, actually not really, because the public may want to join in this site visit and they would be welcomed. So
as long as
we just be setting a date for a site visit.
right, which is where I bring it back to possibly May 5th, where we actually open the hearing and then decide on a time for a site visit.
We need Jason and staff to go out there first. And so we need to have this work order lifted before he can even get his team out there. So I think soonest we're talking about this is the mid-May meeting, if not prior.
So then it really comes down to having, basically continuing this hearing to May 19th and in that discussion, deciding on a time for the site visit.
Yes, if things are lifted.
Yeah, assuming. But if you do
But what
that
would be
now,
Mitch, what would be the downside of simply scheduling the site visit on May 19th, the way we normally do before the regular meeting? If the
Because they,
work, if
well,
the
because
work
they
or-
might have a chance to do the work. Sorry.
right, if they can't do
Well,
that,
but we can always cancel it. I agree with Alex. Let's schedule something, and it probably is going to have to be pushed out, but let's do something. Get something on the schedule.
the upside is we don't have to schedule it again, and there isn't a second meeting to talk about nothing except scheduling the site visit. If everything can happen by May 19th.
I'm in favor of that. If the order gets lifted, it's a half a day, a few hours worth of work with one guy with the GPS. We'll have it staked out. So it's not that hard.
so it sounds like you don't even have to have, I mean, this is, if it's a one person, it's something that could even be done before the lifting. Is that what you're saying?
Technically, it does not fall into that essential work category. I've looked, I'm a business owner.
Right.
If I could have one guy out there all day, I would. We're not doing anything in the urban areas. And I'd consider that an urban survey.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll continue this to May 19th.
All right, and
if
do
I
you want to
could,
have a site visit at, say, 6 o'clock at May 19th?
Sure.
If I
That'll give
could,
us
this
plenty
is
of
this
time.
is Brandon. Just in the instance that we cannot hold that site visit, and Jason, I already asked for another plan showing slope banding, but it might be helpful for folks to also see one with the fade on the ortho turned off or lightened a little bit. Because I tend to agree with you. I think that easement and proposed driveway is pretty much in line with where that gravel path is right now, or pretty close at least. But it might ease some folks' minds if they could actually see that with the ortho and see the contour banding and how it relates to the adjoining properties.
Okay, and that's certainly something we can provide before that meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye, this is Greg Waples. Aye.
Aye.
Dennis,
John
aye.
Lyman. Yep, John Lyman, aye.
Sarah, I.
Dick Jordan, aye.
John Slice and I.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mitch, do you have any news and announcements?
Just simply, next meeting, 2 weeks from now, we have Haystack coming back. And the meeting after that, 4 weeks from now, we have most likely, and I'm expecting Jim O'Donnell and Patricia, Jim O'Donovan and Patricia O'Donnell's application for final subdivision to return.
So, Greg Waples, we were looking for traffic studies from Haystack. Were we not?
We have received from an independent traffic engineer an opinion on it, and that will be available for you for the meeting, way before the meeting. And actually, during this meeting, we actually got the PDF for that. So that will be provided to the, actually, it's going to be provided to the applicant, and it will also be on the Dropbox.
All right.
So,
If there's-
Right,
Go ahead.
as Dick, I do have to ask, I mean, do we really think this forum is going to work for a very large, complicated meeting like Haystack? I mean, I understand the meeting's been called and we have to at least continue it or something, but do we really expect to be able to do, whatever, good work or whatever with this type of format?
I
Well,
agree.
with the biggest development in Hinesburg history.
I agree with Dick. I'm not in favor of it. I can tell you that. But
I'm not either. I think it's too big for this forum.
in being delayed, they can't do anything anyways. There's no construction going on at all.
Well, and I think the more public opinion and public statements, the more difficult it's going to be.
Well, I just think the meeting's going to go on for like 4 hours.
Well, I'll give you the other side of it is that it will be the only thing on the agenda. But
All right. Well, I'm not going to let it go for 4 hours though. Just make sure they know that.
I understand that, and just simply the amount of time that, I mean, this meeting probably, if it was done in person, would have taken about half the time.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That it actually did. I mean, this is good. We're helping the community and so forth, and I'm especially glad that that first application, which really was such a simple boundary adjustment, was able to go forward. They have they had closings and such all set up, and I think they're going to be able to make their deadlines, assuming, of course, that lawyers and so forth can do their thing.
No, I think that's great. I'm fine with that.
Right.
I just think
But
this is a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely, it is a bigger one, and I have a lot of different other questions too, because besides the fact that now they're going to see a traffic study, but we have made a whole bunch of different comments that were made in the supplemental staff report that they haven't submitted anything back to us regarding that. So,
So I understand that we would have to,
I can communicate the fact that it's going to be a very difficult meeting to the applicant and report back to the board.
I appreciate that.
yeah, because I mean, we have to have the meeting because we continued it to that date, but it would be nice to get the applicant's approval to just say, okay, fine, you don't have to come in. We're just planning on continuing it to some later date.
Well, and in
And
fairness, Dick, this is Alex. That meeting was actually continued to the March 17th meeting, which was canceled because it was happening right after the whole COVID-19. So we have in the past canceled meetings without convening to continue them forward, and we've just assumed that everyone understood and made all of that public. But this is a big question. The applicant is expecting to be heard, but you guys are in charge of scheduling and running your meetings. So if the board is not comfortable reviewing this application on April 21st, we ought to tell the applicant that and give them some idea of when they will be heard.
Alex, that's a very good point. Greg Waples reporting. Being heard is a two-edged sword. Having the applicant get a fair hearing is one thing. Also getting town input on the biggest development we've ever had is another issue. So I think everybody on the board is sensitive to that. So I think we need to kind of crack our heads together and decide whether we need to push this out where we can actually have public forums where people are sitting around and talking to each other about how our town's going to grow in that northwest quadrant in the future.
Well, I think you basically just said it right there. I mean, can the applicant get a fair hearing where they're not going to be able to present, they're not going to be able to move around files like they would at a normal hearing? It's going to have to be utilizing what we have here on Zoom. And we've got certain kinks still in this particular meeting that I think we got away with it on here. It was really hard as far as changing different screens, and a lot of what I was seeing would not show when I was actually sharing. So I think that there's a lot of challenges for the applicant to be able to present on it, and we'll have a conversation with the applicant. I mean, as Alex said, there is an expectation from the applicant to be heard on here, but we're living in a very interesting time.
All right, so can you talk to the applicant and then just get back to us on what,
Absolutely.
and then we'll just go from there?
Yeah, it may have to be,
Oh,
yeah.
there we go. So, I mean, are we prepared if the applicant says, oh, they feel fine, they want to go forwards? I mean, I think part of our concerns is the community. Are you prepared to answer that feedback?
What I'm hearing from the board is that this is going to be just too difficult, an
Okay.
application.
Well, the way you ended that statement was, I'll check with the applicant and to see if it's too much of a burden for their presentation, when that wasn't necessarily what I was hearing from
Right.
us.
Yeah.
Just checking. Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're going to tell him, we're going to need to continue this. I mean, it's too awkward for such a big application.
So can I just get a show of hands? I know, Greg, you're on the phone, but you've already indicated, because we can see everybody else. Can you just raise your hand if you are in agreement that this application should wait?
This is Greg Waples. I would love for it to wait until we can actually have in-town meetings where people can communicate in a meaningful way.
So I think the straw poll from what I saw was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the 8 board members that are participating were in favor of moving this to a future meeting when it could be done more in person.
Only 7 can participate.
Right. I'm abstaining there,
Well,
Alex.
there's no formal motion, and yes, you're right.
Understood.
Yeah, well, I guess this is still being recorded, and so
in a moment of levity, in a deep dark time.
I just want to be able to give the applicant a sense of the board that's not, well, a couple folks said this, and be able to say, no, it was pretty much everyone or most everyone. Is the board willing to entertain a much more circumscribed discussion of this project at that meeting if there were one particular element that could be discussed, or you really just don't want to dip into those waters until we can do it more effectively in person?
This is Greg Waples saying, I don't think that would make any sense at all.
But by the same token,
we do just have to, it's obviously up to us, it's our town. Everybody's dealing with this. Every public hearing is dealing with this, whether it's town meetings, whether it's DRBs, select boards. So I only throw that out there for consideration, that everybody has less than optimal conditions to operate in these public hearings.
And it can't go on forever, but I think that eventually, but who knows how long it's going to last, we would need to work through it. Ideally, we'd be able to get back together sooner rather than later. But if that's not the case, I think we have to figure out how to have the hearings. This isn't an ideal forum, but and especially it won't be ideal if you have 30 members of the public wanting to be part of the gang. So my 2 cents.
Well, I think your message is loud and clear, and I just want to say that Mitch and my challenge will be to explain that to the applicant. That's not a challenge, but rather to make sure there's consistency, so that as new applications come before Mitch, he knows whether or not to even schedule them with the board. And I think Greg's right. This particular application is uniquely large and significant, so it's a no-brainer. But if another project were to come in front of Mitch, we would want to be able to say, this is small enough that the board can hear it on a Zoom platform or not. And that's a little tough to have a criteria.
Maybe it's good to get some feedback. in a sense of, here we had 3 applications. Do you think that any of these were too big for the Zoom platform?
Well, I think Russell's would have went on quite a bit longer if we didn't decide to do a site visit.
Yeah, but these were manageable, I think.
I think they were manageable, but I think we also have to consider that they're all going to take a lot longer.
Yes.
Good point.
So maybe go from 3 to 2, you know, on the smaller.
Because I think, I agree. I think that the Russell one, if we had decided to really go with it tonight, could have been another hour of discussion.
It almost, yeah.
And is this like the biggest platform they have for meetings? I mean, I do understand the applicant is probably going to be frustrated, but is this it? Is Zoom it?
There are other platforms, Sarah. There are things like GoToMeeting and Google Hangout, and there are a variety of options. From the experience that Mitch and I have had, at least with GoToMeeting, it works very similarly to Zoom, and Zoom seems to be the one that most, is getting the most play right now. So I don't think we're going to get much better than this.
The other part, and maybe it exists and I don't know because I'm very limited on my Zoom knowledge, but it was really hard to not have the applicant be able to like point to the what was being presented. Is there a way that potentially if you share a screen that you can see a cursor move?
Yes, so Mitch knows how to do that. And we can enable the applicant to do that too, by making them a co-host, and then they will have the power to share a screen, to annotate a screen. That's not difficult to do, although
no matter if we stay away from big projects or not, I think in the future, that's some feedback that maybe we could work on that with the applicant, because that would be really helpful to have them be able to show us on the material.
Yeah. Actually, the part of the plan was, and unfortunately it didn't quite work on this particular one. I think it might be like I was made host, but I don't think I think I have to be the original host for that thing to actually come up. But that said, yes, you can do some drawings, you can do some pointers. There are certain things. There's pros and cons to having the applicant taking it from a host to giving it to an applicant. There's ways of actually doing that and taking that back in the program. But we're actually, Alex and I are still kind of learning how to actually utilize this also. But just getting back to the original other point, it almost seems like that anything larger than this particular last application is going to be too big for this platform.
I would tend to agree.
2 or 3 lot subdivision.
Yeah. I mean, Donovan O'Donnell is a 3-lot subdivision, but there's no development. So I think that one.
That should be fine.
Yeah.
If I may, I think limiting the amount of applicants per meeting is very appropriate. We don't know how long this is going to go on, but I think it's also okay to say these will be truncated meetings. We can't get into a lot of depth, but maybe we can help provide some information, feedback, so they can work on it in the background, because we don't know how long it's going to be. So I really hate to just stop it completely, but these big projects, I agree. I think they got to know right up front, it's not going to work well. You're not going to get the best outcome. But I think we would need to look at each one individually and see how we can proceed somehow, somewhat with some of it to keep it moving. I think that's appropriate. And
I agree completely with John.
All right. Well, I'm getting kicked out of my room, so.
I agree with that.
Are we, do we know what we're doing? You're gonna talk to the applicant?
We're
Tell them
gonna,
that
I
we need
mean,
to postpone it?
basically, listening to this, basically, this, they're gonna have to be continued.
Okay.
And Alice and I are gonna have to find a nice way to kind of explain that. But that's pretty much what I'm hearing from the board. And if we get applications that come in that are something that is simpler, like the first two applications that you had today, or small subdivisions or something like that, that doesn't seem to have a lot of other things going on with it. That may be something that we can push forward. And of course, not really more than 2 applications on a hearing. The only reason why I did, well, we scheduled this a while back before we knew what was going on.
Right.
But I was kind of comfortable with the 3 because the first 2 were really simpler.
Okay.
Fine, yeah.
This is Greg Waples. I think we can do a fair bit of ordinary business electronically, remotely. So we can keep going forward as best we can on the smaller applications.
I agree.
All right. If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
Yeah,
Second.
keep us posted on what the kind of conclusions are, and it's great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Stay well,
And
everyone. Thank you for.
If I may,
And Mitch, if you want me to sign those things, just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I figured what I could even do is just simply fix them up, email them to you, and you can just mail them in.
one more quick comment, if I may. Can you get comment from the applicants that were here this evening to see how they felt the meeting went? Mainly the last one, but
Yeah,
just ask.
okay. We can do something. We can do that and give you some feedback.
All right. Well, everybody stay safe.
Yep.
You
Take
too.
care.
Stay well, everyone.
Be well. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.